Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. Today's video, we're talking about audiobooks. I discovered audiobooks in 2020 and I cannot tell you how much joy they bring me. They are an absolute game changer. I love a good audiobook and I've listened to quite a few, so I'm going to share with you my top favorite ones so far, and they're across a few different genres, so I hope there's something in here for everyone. I hope there's something in here that you would like to try. Here's what I love about audiobooks. First, they make a story so easy to consume. You don't actually have to sit down and find a quiet space to be able to sit and read your book. You could just pop in your headphones and listen to them, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be doing chores, laundry, cooking. I personally find these tasks so much more motivating when I have an audiobook to listen to. They can also feel really immersive. So for example, you know when you read a book and you absolutely love the characters, then it gets turned into a movie and you just feel like you missed out on so much of the experience? Well, an audiobook can feel really immersive in that you're spending so much time with these characters, hours and hours, that you just get to experience them more and build up the world in your head. I love that. Audiobooks can also be an amazing tool to help us build new habits. So for example, let's say you're trying to build up the habit of going for a walk in the middle of the day or cooking more while you're at home. So audiobooks can be this sort of reward tool so that if you do this task, then you will be able to reward yourself by listening to these audiobooks. Personally, for me, this worked so well when I was trying to build up the habit of exercising in the morning. If I went for a run, then I could listen to my very thrilling audiobook. The other amazing thing about audiobooks is celebrity narrators. That is a thing. There are celebrities that will narrate stories and memoirs and tell you about their life. It is so enthralling and so nice to listen to. And there's literally a trained actor telling you a story. I mean, there's nothing, I don't know what's better than that. Okay, so with that, if audiobooks are new to you, hopefully I've enticed you to try something from this list that I'm going to share. And if you are an avid audiobook listener, let me know why you love audiobooks as well. We'll go through a few different categories, so we'll do nonfiction, memoirs, and a couple of genres of fiction. If you have favorite audiobooks, please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for audiobook recommendations. Let's start with fiction first. The first one is just kind of general literary fiction. And here I have to recommend Find Me by Andre Osman. This is incredible. This is so good. This is the sequel to Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman. You might have seen the movie. You will like the book if you enjoy stories about complex relationships, coming of age, self-discovery, identity, and really beautiful, romantic, floral writing. It is stunning. I am obsessed with Andre Osman and I will devour anything he writes. Because of this, Find Me for me was phenomenal. But the narration was by Michael Stuhlbarg, who is the father in the movie Call Me By Your Name. Firstly, can we talk about his voice? I could listen to anything he says. And his acting throughout the book is incredible. You could feel it. You could feel like you're watching the movie, except you're experiencing it. I can't recommend it enough. With Call Me By Your Name, I actually read the book. I didn't listen to the audiobook, but I know that the audiobook is narrated by Armie Hammer. I listened to the sample and also it sounded completely gorgeous. But I have a couple of caveats before going in to Find Me. If you're going in expecting a full sequel of Elio and Oliver, you may be disappointed. I knew this going in, and so I absolutely loved the book. The book is more so about the father and his story, and it's told from multiple different perspectives. We do get Elio and Oliver, but that's sort of smaller chapters and smaller sections later in the book. The majority of it is from the father's perspective and his story. For me, I was absolutely fine with that. I think Andre Osman should have given us whatever he wanted. I was always very drawn to the father's character, and so getting to learn about him more and his perspectives and his story and his background was so exciting to me. I know that that's controversial. A lot of fans felt that Andre Osman should have given us more of Elio and Oliver. Personally, I knew this going in, and so I was not disappointed at all. I was actually completely blown away, and a big part of the experience was Michael Stuhlbarg's narration. So, highly recommend. So the next category we'll talk about is sci-fi fantasy. I don't read these genres much, but these books have made me want to read more of them. So even if you're not a sci-fi fantasy reader, I really think you could enjoy these books a lot. The first one is Project Hail Mary by Andrew Weir. Wow. I have no words. This was so good. It was so adventurous and fast and exciting and funny and emotional and sad. I cried, I laughed out loud, I kept having to rewind and listen to parts because they were so funny and so amazing. This was really, really good. This story follows Ryland Grace. He's an astronaut, he's far into the future, and he wakes up on a spaceship, and he has no idea why he's there, what his name is, what he's supposed to be doing, and he's the sole survivor on the spaceship. And we start piecing together what he's doing and why he's on this mission from his perspective. All we know is he's on this mission to save humanity, but he's trying to piece it all together. And the way that he's doing this is using science. But don't let this intimidate you, because it's explained in quite an easy way to follow. Even if there's parts that you don't understand, it doesn't take away from the story. But personally for me, it gave me this newfound appreciation for the beauty of science, and I just loved it. It was so good, highly recommend. It's adventurous, fast-paced, amazing. Really, after reading this book, I think I need to try more sci-fi. And the next one is Harry Potter. We all know it. It's nostalgic, it's comforting, it's a beautiful escape to go into this world of Hogwarts and experience Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But when you experience it through Stephen Fry's narration, it is a whole other level. The way this man narrates and puts on the voices for all the different characters, you're transported there. I was Harry Potter. I was living in Hogwarts. Seriously, it's so entertaining and so good. It feels like a warm hug. And from then on, anything Stephen Fry narrates, I'm there. I'm gonna listen to it. The next category is mystery thriller. I have quite a few recommendations here because this is one of my favorite genres. The first one is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This is about Lucy Foley. No, it's not. This is about Jess. We follow Jess as she's going to Paris because she needs a new start, so she's leaving England and she's going to stay with her brother in Paris. She arrives at her brother's apartment and she's very surprised to see that it's actually such a gorgeous building, and she doesn't know how her brother came into this living arrangement. She's quite surprised that he's living in this situation. But when she arrives, she finds that her brother's not there, and she starts asking the neighbors, but they're acting a little bit suspicious, almost like there's something they're not telling. So in this book, we are figuring out the mystery with Jess of what happened to her brother. What's really entertaining about this audiobook is that it's told from multiple different perspectives. So in the book, we actually get all of the different neighbors' perspectives on what's happening, and we get a different narrator for each one. So that's something that's really enjoyable and adds to the experience of the book. So this is a really entertaining book to read in audio form. I really like this book. It's a good mystery thriller. It's well done. I would say that of Lucy Foley's work, I most enjoyed The Guest List. That's my favorite one. I haven't tried the audiobook, but I really enjoyed that one. The next recommendation is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is the same author as The Silent Patient, which was also brilliant. The Maidens is your typical dark academia vibe book that's set in Cambridge University with a murder mystery. Here in this story, there's this very handsome, charismatic Greek classics professor who's accused of murdering one of his students at this university. We then follow from Mariana's perspective. Mariana is a trained group therapist. She goes to Cambridge University because her niece, Zoe, is the friend of the girl who was murdered. And so Mariana goes to stay with Zoe to just make sure that she's okay. But then because she is so good at understanding dynamics and reading people, she starts getting involved in solving this mystery. This is really good. I was very engrossed by the mystery. I had to know what happened. I couldn't stop listening to it. Definitely recommend. The next one is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This one is really emotional for a mystery. We follow Laurel, whose daughter, Ellie, went missing about 10 years ago, and everyone in her family has sort of tried to move on with their lives and put it behind them, but her, as her mother, she's the one person who still has hope and wants to know what happened. She has hope for Ellie coming back. One day, Laurel's at a cafe and she meets Floyd. Floyd is a stranger who captures her attention and she starts spending more time with him. As she's getting closer and closer to him and spending more time with him, she meets Poppy, his 9-year-old daughter. And what strikes her about Poppy is that she reminds her so much of Ellie, her own daughter. And so the mystery begins. What happened to Ellie? How did she go missing? Is she coming back? The way this story is told is from a past perspective and then a current perspective. So it's really, really good. It's emotional, it's sad, it's quite devastating, and I genuinely could not figure it out. I really didn't know which direction the story was going to take, but it was really well done. I definitely want to read more Lisa Jules after this. The next one I have to recommend is A Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreight. You would like this one if you're into sort of courtroom dramas, legal mysteries. Here we're following from an attorney's perspective, a woman named Lizzie. One day while at the office, she gets a call from prison and she realizes it's this person who used to be her classmate years and years ago who's calling her and said he's being accused of murdering his own wife and he wants her to represent him. She has absolutely no idea why he wants her to represent him because she's not even a criminal lawyer. So it's very mysterious, it's very fast-paced. I was very drawn into the mystery. I really wanted to know what happened next. And I do recommend this if you're into, like I said, the legal side of things, domestic type mysteries. It's really entertaining. The next category is classics. I'm usually not much of a classics reader, and I know that they can feel really intimidating, but I promise that these ones are really accessible, very entertaining. With the audiobook, it makes them even more accessible. So if you've been trying to get into classics more, I really recommend these. They also have a little bit of a mystery around them, which draws you in. And I personally really like mysteries, so these ones really worked for me. The first one is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Wow, this was really good. It was atmospheric, it was gothic, it was mysterious, and it was so well done. So well done. Also, this is the perfect fall read because of how gothic it is and the haunting mystery in it, but it's not scary. Maybe a little bit, but I can't read horror, so don't worry about that. It's not that scary, but it's really, really good. And also, it is so beautifully written. So what's the plot line? We follow from our narrator's perspective, who we don't actually ever know her name. She's an unnamed protagonist. She's about 20 years old and she's a travel companion of an elderly woman. She's in Monte Carlo. While in Monte Carlo, she meets the beautiful, charismatic, and recently widowed Mr. Maxim de Winter, who's in his 40s. They meet and they kind of hit it off and they start hanging out more. And then they end up getting married and he takes her back to his home in England called Manderley. Manderley is his estate that was passed down from generation to generation. So he's a very wealthy man. So Maxim is a widower. He lost his wife Rebecca about a year ago. But Maxim's very mysterious. He won't talk about his wife and he starts almost withdrawing a little bit when they move back to Manderley. And while they're there, this shadow of Rebecca starts looming over them. And Rebecca, from what our protagonist could tell, was so beautiful, loved by so many, very charismatic, and she's intimidated by this person that she was. This is the OG psychological thriller. It is so beautifully done. We're following from this character whose perspective is very naive, a hopeless romantic, so young, and just so intimidated by Rebecca. It's really entertaining to read from. But you find that through the story, she starts to mature and gain a new perspective. It's really, really brilliant. It's perfect. It's so suspenseful. And I would love to read more Daphne du Maurier. The next one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is narrated by Stephen Fry. The story follows Dorian, this man of immaculate beauty, and he wants for his youth and beauty to stay throughout his whole life. And he almost does this deal with the devil where when he has his portrait painted, he wants for the portrait to age rather than himself and he stay young and beautiful forever. And he starts pursuing a life of pleasure and sin, and it all appears on the portrait rather than on himself. It's ominous, it's mysterious, it's atmospheric. It's really, really good. Now we have another mysterious one. Okay, we're definitely sensing a pattern here. This one's Passing by Nella Larson. This one is short and really packs a punch. If you've read Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, you would love this one. This is almost like the OG version of that. Really short, but very, very powerful. In such a short book, we explore race and identity and colorism and queerness. I can't believe how much is packed in here. All while the characters feeling fully developed, fully fleshed out, their relationships very much explained. Here she very much shows rather than tells. It feels very cinematic. You feel like you're actually living it. It's brilliant. The story is set in 1920s. It follows Irene, a Black woman living in Harlem with her husband and her kids. She bumps into an old friend, Claire, from her youth. Claire, like Irene, is also Black and fairer skinned, that she could be white passing. And the difference is that Claire actually chooses to leave the community and live as a white passing woman, not telling anyone her secret, even her racist husband. So the story is about the tension that is caused when these women come into each other's lives. And because it's so short, I think it's better that you don't know any more than that, so that nothing else is given away. But it's told with such mystery and intrigue, and I learned so much and also was so entertained, and I had no idea which direction the story was going to go. This one is definitely worth your while. All right, next let's talk about memoirs, and these are celebrity memoirs. The first one is A Funny Life by Michael McIntyre. If you don't know Michael McIntyre, he's a very famous British comedian. He's so loved and so hilarious and so feel good and will raise your spirits anytime you watch any of his clips. He's my absolute favorite comedian. I love watching him, and I loved learning about parts of his life. And this entire book is narrated by Michael himself. He's very funny, he's uplifting, but it also gets very heartfelt and emotional at parts. We learn about his rise to fame, how that changed his and his family's life, about his relationship with his agent manager, who's called Addison, and also he calls him the captain, where they share a very, very close friendship. One thing I also really loved about this is he mentions his journey in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is an arts festival where all sorts of performers, comedians, musicians come here and perform. And because I'm in Edinburgh, it just felt like so much more real listening to his experience while being here in Edinburgh. I really, really enjoyed that. So if you're looking for something that's a laugh and light, but also heartfelt, and you like Michael McIntyre, I think this one's great. The next one is Taste My Life Through Food by Stanley Tucci. Big shout out to my friend Brianna, who always has amazing recommendations. This one was phenomenal. Here, of course, it's narrated by Stanley Tucci, and he tells us about his life through food. So he comes from an American-Italian family that loves food, and he's a foodie himself. And we learn about different parts of his life through a specific meal that he associates with that period. So we jump around in his life, but he tells us with such great detail about this meal. He even walks us through the recipe in the beginning, and then he tells us about this memory that he associates with this meal. It's such a unique way of looking at someone's life, and I was so entertained. I have so much more appreciation for Stanley. I think he's amazing, and I think getting to almost spend more time with him through his memoir was very, very special, and his voice is wonderful to listen to. If you're a foodie, you're gonna love this one especially. The next one is Shoe Dog, a memoir by the creator of Nike by Phil Knight. This is not your average business book. This is not your average entrepreneur telling you about all his credentials and why he's so amazing and all his successes. That's not what it is. This feels like a much more raw, honest, humble recount of this entrepreneur's life and experience, and its ups and also its deep, deep downs. We learn about him not just in terms of his business and how he created Nike and how it started, but we learn as well about him as a father and as a friend and as a manager. He really puts it all out there. I absolutely loved this book, and at certain parts I actually cried. It was really, really touching and very, very inspiring. I would recommend this to anyone who's having a change in their life or in their career. I also recommend it if you're a fresh graduate, if you're curious about the business world, if you're curious about Nike as well. I think this book would benefit so many people. And I also think it could benefit you if you have any sort of passion project. It doesn't have to be business. Because I'm going to read you this quote, one of my favorite ones. "I'd like to share the experience, the ups and downs, so that some young man or woman somewhere going through the same trials and ordeals might be inspired or comforted or warned. Some young entrepreneur, maybe some athlete or painter or novelist might press on. It's all the same drive, the same dream." It offers so much inspiration and wisdom and a push to search for your own calling, whatever that might be. Highly recommend. Very emotional, very beautiful, very educational. So we're down to our last category, nonfiction. The first one I have to recommend is probably the book that got me into audiobooks, and that is The Power of Vulnerability by the wonderful Brené Brown. I first learned about Brené Brown when I saw her TED Talk that went completely viral in 2010. Brené Brown is a professor who's famous for her research on shame and vulnerability and how she uses this to guide leadership. This whole book feels like a workshop with Brené about vulnerability and how without vulnerability there's no courage, and without vulnerability there's no real connection with others, and we're really missing out on building really strong, real, authentic relationships and showing up authentically when we are unable to be vulnerable. I enjoyed this so much. I learned so much. I laughed so much. She's so relatable and entertaining. I recommend this to anyone and everyone. This is like a guidebook of living a full, meaningful, happy life. The last book I have to recommend is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I am truly fascinated by the topic of money, and I think it's even more fascinating how it's something that, whether we like it or not, can control so much of our life, yet socially is inappropriate to talk about. The whole idea of this book is that just because we know about money does not tell us how we behave with it. So the people who feel most secure when it comes to money aren't the ones who know the most about it, but it's down to their behavior and their relationship with it. And the book is told through short stories, giving you real examples of how people think about money and why. It walks you through how people make financial decisions, how it could be down to their own personal history, their own personal ego, how we make general decisions with our emotions, but not necessarily through data when it comes to money. It is so entertaining and inspiring and interesting and just very insightful to how we behave as humans. So that was it, friends. Those were my favorite so far audiobooks. Let me know if any of these were interesting. Let me know what your favorite audiobooks are, please, because I'm always trying to find recommendations. I love a good narrator and I love a great book, so put them both together. That's the dream. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.